You walked in for three things: milk, bread, one specific kind of pasta. You had a plan. You were certain. You were in and out in 10 minutes, you told yourself. And then 40 minutes later, you are standing at the checkout watching a conveyor belt fill up with items you never intended to buy, spending an amount of money you never intended to spend, with only a vague memory of how any of it got into your cart. This happens to nearly everyone, nearly every time. It does not happen because you are careless or impulsive or bad at shopping. It happens because the building you walked into was specifically engineered to make it happen. Every aisle angle, every shelf height, every product placement, every floor tile and refrigerator hum was the result of deliberate design choices backed by decades of behavioral research. This is the supermarket as a disorientation machine. And today we are going to walk through exactly how it works, who built it, who pays for it, and what it is quietly costing you every single week. Not with vague complaints about modern capitalism, with names, mechanisms, and a money trail. Let us start at the beginning. The modern supermarket did not evolve organically. The self-service grocery store model was a commercial invention of the early 20th century, and from its earliest decades, the people who built these stores understood one foundational truth. The longer a customer spends inside the store, the more they spend. Time in the building converts directly into revenue. That single insight has driven almost every design decision in the industry ever since. By the 1950s and 60s, grocery chains were already commissioning layout studies. By the 1970s and 80s, a formal discipline called retail environment research had emerged, with consultants selling store design recommendations to chains across North America and Europe. The academic field of consumer psychology fed directly into commercial practice. University research on attention, habit, and decision fatigue was translated into floor plans. The result is a system that looks like a convenience for shoppers, but functions as a trap. And the trap has several interlocking components, each one compounding the effect of the others. We are going to go through them one by one. First component, the entrance funnel. You almost never walk into a supermarket and find the staple items immediately to your right. In the overwhelming majority of large format grocery stores, the entrance deposits you into a produce section or a bakery. This is not accidental. Fresh flowers and freshly baked bread create sensory impressions of abundance and wholesomeness before you have touched a single packaged item. Your brain receives a signal that says, "This is a good place. Spend time here." The produce placement also serves a second function. It forces you to traverse a significant portion of the store before you reach any of the items you actually came for. You did not choose to browse the seasonal display near the entrance. The architecture chose that for you. Your path was decided before you arrived. Second component, the perimeter loop. In almost every large supermarket, the dairy, meat, and bread sections are placed at the far corners and back walls of the store. These are the highest frequency staples, the items most people actually need on most shopping trips. Placing them at maximum distance from the entrance guarantees that you must walk past hundreds of other products to reach them. The perimeter of the store becomes a mandatory tour. Retail researchers call this the forced exposure principle. You are not browsing, you are being routed. The distance between the door and the milk is not determined by storage logistics. It is determined by how many seconds of product exposure the chain wants to guarantee before you reach something you actually intended to buy. Third component, aisle design and deliberate disorientation. Supermarket aisles are rarely laid out in a simple grid that would allow you to move efficiently between the things you want. Ends of aisles, called end caps, are premium display real estate. Aisle lengths are calibrated to keep you walking without providing easy cross-access. Some stores use slight curves or irregular aisle lengths to prevent you from developing a reliable mental map of the space. When you cannot build a reliable mental map of a space, you slow down. When you slow down, you look at more products. When you look at more products, you buy more of them. The disorientation is a feature, not a flaw in the design. Regulars who learn a store layout represent a measurable problem for chains, because a shopper with a perfect mental map of the store can retrieve 3 items in under 4 minutes and exit before impulse buying can occur. This is why grocery chains periodically rearrange their entire store layouts. The stated reason is always a refresh, an update, an improvement for customers. The actual function is to destroy the mental maps that regular shoppers have built. Every rearrangement resets the learning curve and forces another period of slow, disoriented exploration. You thought they were renovating. They were resetting the trap. Fourth component, shelf architecture and eye-level economics. Not all positions on a shelf are equal. For decades, the consumer packaged goods industry has known that products placed at adult eye level sell significantly more units than identical products placed on the bottom shelf or the top shelf. The shelf is a hierarchy, and position in that hierarchy is bought and sold. This is where slotting fees enter the story. Slotting fees are payments made by consumer packaged goods companies, the manufacturers of branded cereals, snacks, condiments, beverages, and household products, directly to grocery chains in exchange for favorable shelf placement. These fees can run from several $1,000s per product per store to hundreds of thousands of dollars for a national chain rollout. They are a permanent, structural feature of the grocery industry. The result is that the products at your eye level are not there because they are the best value or the healthiest option or the most popular choice. They are there because their manufacturer paid the most money for that position. The shelf is an auction. You are looking at the winning bids, not a neutral presentation of your options. Store brand products, which carry significantly higher profit margins for the chain, are typically placed at slightly inconvenient positions. The shopper who wants the cheapest option must crouch or reach. The shopper who simply grabs what is directly in front of them buys the brand that paid for placement. The architecture of the shelf is designed to reward passivity with a higher transaction value. Fifth component, the end cap premium. The display at the end of every aisle, the end cap, is the highest value real estate in the entire store. End caps generate disproportionately high sales volumes because they are visible from two directions. They interrupt the walking rhythm of shoppers, and they read as promotional even when the product is not discounted. Shoppers assume end cap placement means sale. It often means the opposite. Consumer research has repeatedly documented that products on end caps sell more units even at full price than they would on a regular shelf at a discounted price. The placement itself creates the perception of value. CPG brands pay a premium for end cap slots on top of their standard slotting fees. A product appearing on an end cap near a store entrance can cost its manufacturer a fee that dwarfs its advertising budget for that region. Sixth component, the checkout gauntlet. You made it through the store. You have resisted or not resisted the produce display, the perimeter loop, the disoriented aisle wandering, the eye-level auction, and the end cap illusions. You are now standing in line, and you are in the single most psychologically exposed position in the entire building. You are stationary. You have nothing to do. Your decision fatigue is at its peak. And you are surrounded by small, inexpensive items. The checkout lane is engineered around a specific behavioral insight. Low-cost items purchased without deliberation, sometimes called grab items, generate some of the highest per-unit profit margins in the store. A candy bar, a small battery pack, a magazine, a lip balm. The price is low enough that the mental calculation of whether to buy it is over before it begins. These items are placed at checkout by design, and their placement is also sold to manufacturers through a fee structure. Now let us follow the money trail all the way through. The grocery chain profits at multiple layers simultaneously. It collects slotting fees from CPG brands for shelf position. It collects end cap fees for display placement. It collects cooperative advertising fees when a brand wants to appear in the chain's promotional materials. It collects reset fees when a brand wants its display refreshed. And then, after all of those fees, it also collects the retail margin on every product it sells. The CPG brands, companies like the major snack conglomerates, beverage corporations, and packaged food manufacturers, recover their slotting fee investments through the prices they charge consumers. The fees are not absorbed as a cost of doing business out of margins. They are modeled into the retail price at which the product is sold. When you buy a name brand cereal at eye level, a portion of that price is paying for the right to be at eye level in the first place. Smaller food manufacturers without the capital to pay slotting fees are structurally excluded from favorable shelf positions, regardless of product quality. An independent brand making a genuinely superior product at a competitive price will typically land on the bottom shelf, if it gets onto the shelf at all. The shelf is not a meritocracy, it is a pay-to-play system, and the toll is passed to you. Now let us look at the sensory engineering layer because the manipulation does not stop at layout and placement. Supermarkets actively manage the sensory environment to influence spending behavior. Temperature is one lever. The transition from the warmer entrance and dry goods aisles to the cooler perimeter where refrigerated products live creates a physical sensation of freshness and quality. Your body interprets the cold air near the dairy section as a signal that the food is pristine. Scent is another lever. Bakeries and hot food counters are nearly always positioned to send their aromas toward the entrance and main traffic paths rather than toward the back. The smell of bread baking or chicken roasting is not a byproduct of store operations. It is a designed stimulus. Hungry shoppers buy more. Shoppers who smell food become hungry shoppers. The ventilation system is part of the sales strategy. Sound is a lever that has been studied since at least the 1980s. Research published in academic marketing journals documented that the tempo of background music in grocery stores correlates with shopping pace. Slower music leads to slower movement through the store, which correlates with higher spend per visit. Many chains use slow, structurally pleasant background music during peak shopping hours as a direct application of this finding. Flooring is a lever almost no one thinks about. Some stores use smaller floor tiles in high-margin sections of the store. When cartwheels pass over smaller tiles, they make a slightly faster clicking sound, which the shopper's nervous system registers as increased speed. The shopper unconsciously slows down to match what feels like a more comfortable pace. Tile size as a behavioral nudge. This is the level of granularity at which this industry operates. Let us address the counter-argument directly, because it will come up. The counter-argument is that none of this is deceptive because consumers are free to shop however they choose. You can walk straight to the milk, you can ignore the end caps, you can plan your list and stick to it. Nobody is forcing you to buy anything. This argument fails for a specific reason that is worth naming clearly. Behavioral research consistently shows that human decision-making is not a purely rational, deliberate process. It relies heavily on environmental cues, cognitive shortcuts, and attention allocation. The store design is specifically engineered to exploit the gaps in deliberate decision-making, to reach the automatic, low-effort part of your cognition rather than the careful, analytic part. Saying you can choose differently is technically accurate and practically meaningless for most people in most shopping contexts. The second counter-argument is that slotting fees are a normal business practice and actually help cover the costs chains incur when introducing new products, like repricing, restocking, and logistics coordination. There is a grain of truth in this. New product introductions do carry real costs. But the fees charged by large chains to large CPG brands far exceed any plausible logistical cost recovery. They function primarily as a tax on shelf access, and that tax is passed to consumers. The third counterargument is that stores offer price comparison tools, loyalty apps, and weekly circulars that help consumers shop efficiently. This is true. But notice who controls those tools. The chain's app nudges you toward its promotional items. The circular is curated to highlight products from manufacturers who have paid for promotional placement. The loyalty program tracks your purchase history and uses it to target you with offers calibrated to your specific spending vulnerabilities. The tool of transparency is also a tool of extraction. Now the cost to you, stated plainly. Industry research on unplanned grocery purchases has consistently found that a substantial majority of grocery purchases were not on the shopper's original list. Estimates across multiple studies place unplanned purchases somewhere between 40 and 60% of total grocery spend for the average household visit. If your household spends an average amount on groceries each week, a conservative estimate suggests that somewhere between $15 and $30 per trip represents spending that the store architecture generated, not your actual needs. Over a year, across 52 weekly shops, that is a meaningful sum of money. Money spent not because you needed those items or even wanted them in any considered way, but because the environment engineered a moment in which buying them was the path of least resistance. The store did not steal from you, it simply arranged reality so that you handed the money over voluntarily in a state of mild cognitive overload, standing in a building designed to produce exactly that outcome. There is also a nutritional cost layered on top of the financial one. The products that dominate eye-level shelf positions, end caps, and checkout lanes are disproportionately processed foods. Sugary beverages, salty snacks, and confectionery. This is not because healthier products cannot secure placement. It is because the manufacturers of highly processed, high-margin products have more capital to spend on slotting fees. The economics of shelf placement tilt the visible food environment toward products with the lowest nutritional density. Public health researchers have documented correlations between food environment design and consumption patterns at the population level. The store is not just shaping your individual receipt. Multiplied across millions of households, making millions of weekly trips, the engineered food environment shapes the dietary baseline of entire populations. That is a public health consequence funded, in part, by slotting fee economics. Let us also look at who this system most harms. Shoppers with higher incomes, more time, and more stable lives can more easily pre-plan shopping trips, prepare lists, and resist impulse spending. Shoppers who are time-pressed, cognitively depleted from demanding work schedules, financially stressed, or managing multiple household demands have less cognitive bandwidth available to resist the engineered environment. The disorientation machine extracts most efficiently from the people who can least afford the extraction. Online grocery shopping was briefly discussed as a corrective to all of this. When you shop through an app or a website, you are not physically routed past end caps, you are not slowed by scent and music, and you are not caught in a checkout gauntlet. But the chains adapted quickly. Digital shelf architecture replicates the physical shelf in almost every relevant way. On a grocery app, sponsored products appear at the top of every search result. Brands pay for top-of-results placement the same way they pay for eye-level shelf space. Suggested items appear during checkout based on your purchase history, performing the same function as the checkout lane grab items. The end cap becomes a banner placement inside the app. The digital store is the physical store, translated into software and operating 24 hours a day. The mechanism is not the building. The mechanism is the incentive structure. As long as grocery chains and CPG brands share a mutual financial interest in maximizing unplanned spending per visit, the specific medium, whether physical tiles or digital pixels, is secondary. The architecture will follow the incentive wherever shopping moves. So what does knowing this actually change? The honest answer is, for most people on most trips, not as much as you would like to think. The research on awareness as a corrective to behavioral design is sobering. Knowing that a store is engineered to disorient you does not fully neutralize the disorientation. The effects operate partly below the level of conscious awareness, and awareness alone does not bypass the cognitive mechanisms being exploited. What does materially help is structural friction. Shopping with a written list before entering the store. Eating before you go. Setting a hard budget limit. Visiting stores less frequently with larger planned shops rather than frequent smaller trips. Each of these interventions introduces deliberate decision-making at a point in the process before the environment can degrade it. They are not perfect, but they are documented to reduce unplanned spending in consistent and measurable ways. But the deeper point is not about individual tactics. The deeper point is about where responsibility sits. Every piece of mainstream guidance on grocery budgeting is directed at the shopper. Make a list. Avoid shopping hungry. Stick to the perimeter. The entire discourse frames the problem as a failure of individual discipline. The industry that funds the research, builds the environment, and profits from the outcome is never the subject of the sentence. The grocery chain commissions the behavioral research. The CPG brand pays the slotting fee. The retail environment consultant designs the floor plan. The loyalty program algorithm targets your specific vulnerabilities. And then when you leave with $40 more than you intended to spend, the cultural narrative says, You should have made a better list. The system that engineered the outcome remains invisible. The person who experienced the outcome carries the blame. That invisibility is not an accident. It is the final, most important layer of the design. A system that is understood is a system that can be regulated, resisted, or replaced. A system that reads as natural as just the way stores work, as simply how shopping is, persists without challenge. The disorientation machine works best when nobody is looking for the machine. You walked in for three things. The building was ready for you before you arrived. The shelf positions were auctioned months before your visit. The aisle angles were tested in behavioral labs. The music tempo was selected for your demographic. The scent was vented toward your likely entry path. And when you left with a full cart, every party in the system got paid. Every party except the one holding the receipt. And now you can see the strings.